Hey everybody, welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I'm Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And we have a Q&A episode for you guys today. We haven't done one of these in a little bit, so it's good to always get these out once in a while since we do get asked a lot of questions. So I will bring up the questions and I will ask them to Alex and then we will discuss them.
I know what the first one is this time. I don't normally when we do these, Matthew springs these on me, but I actually know what the first question is. Unless he mixes them
so
up.
I didn't mix them up this time. We're going in order this time. So the first one is from Paul, and he asks, "What are your thoughts on the new Sony GM 100mm macro?"
I think we both have slightly different thoughts on this, and certainly probably slightly different things that we're doing. My thoughts are I've already ordered one, which is a different thought to you've had about it. But that doesn't mean I recommend it to people. And the reason is I don't recommend it to people is I haven't tried it yet. And, I'm not going to review it. But one of the reasons I am going to order one is so that I know everyone has been asking me about it and will continue to ask me about it. So makes it obvious to me that I need to try one. And I'll order one and I'll buy one. And if it's really awful, which it won't be, I can always sell it again. I think the other reason why for me I'm happy to order it is I know that 100mm is a very useful focal length underwater. Yes, it's not massively different from what I already have, in that I already have two 90mm for my Sony. But I do shoot a lot of macro. I think, there are some, professional professional underwater photographers who basically just do only big animals. Whereas I shoot lots of macro. And therefore, for me, having a better quality macro lens, even by a small amount, is worthwhile because it's going to impact thousands of photos I take every year. So that makes the purchase for me very justifiable. The fact that people are going to want to know if they should get one, and without owning one, I probably can't give them that advice. And secondly, because I shoot so much macro, it's not like I occasionally do macro. It's a real no-brainer for me. Specification wise, the things that are attractive about this lens. First of all, it's Sony pulling out all the stops saying this is as good as we can make a macro lens. Now, how much better than it is over what's out there at the moment, we won't know until we actually get to try one. And particularly shooting through water, how much of that do you really realize? I don't know. We won't know at the time. There's two other factors on this lens that I find very interesting. The first is that it allows you to focus closer than 1:1. And that is a valuable thing underwater because not only does it give you more magnification, it also allows you to move closer to the subject and shoot through less water. So that's always going to be a nice place to start. So I think it goes to 1 to 1.4 magnification. So it's quite a good bonus. But it's particularly the fact it allows you to get closer because obviously the longer the telephoto of a macro lens, the further away you are at 1:1, the usual minimum focus. And as a result, you're shooting through more water. And then the second feature that really attracts me about this is the lens has been specifically designed to take Sony's high quality teleconverters. And one of the things we've said on here for a long time about Sony's macro lens choices is we wish there were more focal lengths available. And one of the reasons we've not been able to use those focal lengths is you can't use Sony's high quality teleconverters on them. And I would quite regularly use teleconverters on my Nikon 105 because it would fit teleconverters. Although with that lens, Nikon actually didn't recommend using them. And it was always said does not work, but it did fit and it did work. And I used to use them regularly. The fact that now this lens has them and is actually designed to be used and promoted to be used with them, I think is a major attraction. I'm not going to put a 2 times on it. I'm not interested in shooting a 200mm macro lens really, but I definitely think a 1.4 times, get into that 150mm macro lens for certain types of shooting. It could be really, really nice. And the expectation is the autofocus will still perform really, really excellently with that teleconverter in place. So those are the things that attract me to the lens. The proof will be when we try it. But I know that you haven't ordered one, Matthew. I know you've had big expenditure in recent weeks, so there's good reasons. But why are you why would you say hold your horses and wait and see to people more than I am?
So I think if I didn't have, or if who's ever thinking about it doesn't have a macro lens for their Sony system and you have the funds available, go for it. Because I think all around is probably going to be an incredible lens in terms of its overall performance, its build quality, like you said, the ability to take teleconverters. And I'm sure the image quality is going to be fantastic. My hesitation with it would be, and again, we're not going to know this until we actually get to use one.
Yeah, and
Is
most users have already got a macro lens for their Sony, and it's going
yes.
to be a 90.
So
So
yeah. So I have the Sigma 105, which is, in my opinion, it's a bit better optically than the Sony 90mm offering. It is a bit. The only downside that I've really found with it is it's kind of slow in terms of its autofocus capabilities, which isn't awesome, but it's workable. Um, so my hesitation would be, how much better is that image quality going to be from the Sony GM than the other significantly cheaper offerings that a lot of people probably already have at this point? And that I'm not totally convinced on. I'm sure it's going to be a spectacular lens, but I think there's only so good you can likely make a macro lens these days. Like the Nikon Z Mount 105, incredible lens. The Canon RF 100, incredible lens. The Tamron 90 that you have and I've shot, incredible lens. And the Sigma's an incredible lens, all in terms of their optical quality. And if that's the thing you're most concerned about, it's probably harder to justify the $1,500 expense, which is really expensive for a macro lens, even over the other, even over the Nikon and Canon offerings. So if money were no object and I didn't have a macro lens, no question, Sony GM all the way. But until I can see proof that it's significantly better than what's already out there, it'd be hard for me to justify getting one. But there are some perks to it, like you said, the ability to take teleconverters, the ability to have that to focus a bit closer because it does beyond 1:1. All of that would be useful. I just don't know how much more useful that would be for me personally.
Yeah, and the reality is that most Sony users out there already have a 90mm lens. Chances
Yeah.
are, if they're buying this new lens, they're not just having to buy the lens, they're probably going to have to buy a new port for it, or a load of port extensions, which also cost an arm and a leg. So there's considerable investment for really a lens that isn't that significantly different in terms of focal length, and you have to look very closely to see the sharpness difference. There may be an autofocus improvement, but again, how much is that in real terms? The Sony 90mm is not a bad focusing lens on the latest Sony cameras. So
One thing I would say, and this might, and it could be one of those things where it's like until you use it, you don't really understand how much better it is. It could be one of those things. Like if people haven't shot the Nikonos 13mm and they're used to shooting 8 to 15, and they're like, oh, this is really good. How much better can it be? Well, once you shoot one, you're like, oh, it's significantly better. I wonder if this could be something like that. I just have a harder time believing that with regards to it being a macro lens. But we'll see. I do hope I can get my hands on one at some point and play around with it. I don't know how soon that's going to be, but and maybe that will completely change my mind. I hope not, because I don't want to spend $1,500 on a macro lens, but you never know.
Yeah, so I'd say right now our advice to people is, to be honest, the sensible thing is to wait and see. If you're a Sony user and you're sitting on a 90mm, which is what most Sony users will be doing, yes, this lens is theoretically a bit better, but given the price of buying a new lens and a new port probably, or at least a port extension, you're talking about $2,000 plus.
Yeah.
And for what's likely to be marginal gains, and you could see some very disappointed people having spent that money and not seeing the result. But you'll also see some very happy people, because using a high quality product like a GM lens is always going to make you happy. But yeah, right now I'd wait and see I think we're expecting them to come out about mid-November. So doesn't work very well with my travel plans. So I'm probably not going to get to shoot it till January, because I'll be away in Lembe in mid-November, which would be a great place to test it, but it's not going to be unless it happens to come a bit earlier than that. But watch. We'll have it on here as soon as we can, I guess is the answer. Yeah. Okay, next question.
So, and this kind of ties in with speaking with people who might be disappointed in a purchase. This comes from Thomas. I have heard mixed reports on the MFO-1. It's the Nauticam MFO-1. Should I get one? And I have not used one. I actually have one here on loan from Nauticam, but conditions have been so bad that I haven't been diving in 40-something days. So I haven't gotten to try it yet. But I know you have used it a lot. I have also seen a lot of the mixed reports around.
It's been pretty much permanently on my camera for the last 40 days.
So maybe that's all we have to say.
Yeah, no, but it's not. No, it's a complicated product, I think. I think so. The MFO-1 is a high quality but low powered supplemental close up lens. It allows lenses like your 100mm, your 105s, your 90mm to focus closer and therefore achieve magnification. And at the same time, it slightly improves the image quality. It slightly improves the autofocus performance. But those two are slight. I think that Nauticam muddied the waters a bit with this lens by putting a lot of spotlight on the fact that it slightly improves the autofocus, it slightly improves the image quality. And because they were worried that people wouldn't understand why they made a weak macro lens. And so they wanted to promote it in its, in those terms. And I kind of understand why they did that, but I think that's caused people to think, oh, if I buy this, my autofocus is going to be transformed and my image quality is going to be transformed. And both take a step in the positive direction, but not transformatively so. And I think that leads some people to go, I put this on, it doesn't make a difference. What this lens is for if you routinely shoot your macro lens and you run into your minimum focus and you don't get your subject as big in the frame as you want it to be, but you're not dealing with a super macro subject, you just want a little bit more, which is actually something that if you're an experienced underwater photographer, you find you do a lot. You find a nudie brank, oh yeah, I can shoot it like this. Yeah, I can shoot it and crop it afterwards and that'd be fine. But I don't want to crop it afterwards. I want to get the shot exactly right in camera. And that's really where something like the MFO comes in. Now, if you're a photographer and off the show, the way I sum this up is basically if you're not good, you won't appreciate the MFO. Because if you're not good, you probably aren't getting to minimum focus very much. So it's almost pointless for you. And secondly, you're probably cropping all your macro pictures loads anyway. So again, you're like, what's the point of this lens? I can just crop it. And I don't ever get to minimum focus. So ultimately, the people who are frustrated with it are the photographers who are not good enough to appreciate that or to actually get themselves down to minimum focus because they're, oh, that'll do. I'll just crop it afterwards. Oh, I can't bother to shoot a vertical. I'll just shoot horizontal and crop a vertical out of it. And if that's the way you approach things, you are. So, my advice is what I find with the MFO is the photographers who are really good absolutely love it. Hardly ever comes off their camera. Photographers who are just maybe, not as into it as getting the shot exactly in camera, they don't appreciate it. They don't see the point of it. It's like, I can just crop it. Why do I need that extra magnification? It's, it's only giving me a little bit more, I might as well just crop it. I never get to minimum focus anyway. Well, you don't need it then. So, so the slightly, but I think that, it's, for the right photographers, it is a must-have accessory. For many people, it feels a little bit unnecessary. And given it's got quite a high price, I would be honest with yourself about which side of that divide you're likely to fall into, whether deciding whether to have it.
Yeah, I'm excited to try it out, but I don't anticipate this is going to be something that I would use long term. Just because, as we've discussed 1,000 times on the show, I don't always shoot high magnification pictures, so I don't necessarily know how frequently I would use it.
I think that also comes though because of where you dive. I think you start do some trips to Asia, and suddenly that thing will be on all the time.
Yes, fair enough.
Which is another factor in whether who was it who wrote, but whether he should get one or not.
Yeah, Thomas,
yeah.
All right, moving on to the last question for this Q&A, and this one says, I was looking at winners from the recent Sienna contest. Why do contests keep awarding the same images over and over?
Well, I don't think that needs to be specifically about any one. I think as long as I've been in underwater photography, people have always moaned about the same images seem to win again and again. And the first thing I would say is look at those images and try and work out why they're constantly appealing to judges. One of the things you can see from competitions, and one of the things you learn, competitions are about choosing the right pictures for the contest. And pictures that typically do well are the right sort of pictures. And there's a lot to be learned from looking at those pictures. That said, I do think that this specific example, the Sienna competition, is a very prestigious photographic event run in the Italian town in Tuscany of Siena. And it's an old medieval town. I think it's Statue of David's there, but I haven't been to Siena, I don't think. And it's a beautiful medieval town, and the town's council funds this big photographic expo, which has a competition of multiple things, everything from journalistic photography to nature photography to landscape photography, drone photography, all the different types of photography, all coming together in one thing. And they have an underwater category there. It's not the biggest underwater competition, but the event, if you can go to it, is fantastic because it's a multi-day event in a small town with lots of social events, lots of gatherings. And I think people that go really love it. And I know friends of mine who enter that competition enter it every year, not because they're going to win any great prizes, but they love going to the event because it's a fantastic networking event. They invite amazing speakers along, and a lot of high-profile photographers enter it. And particularly if you're from North America, going to a 1,000-year-old European town is a pretty cool thing to do, and for it to be kind of a work trip is also quite nice. That's, I said, I judged the Siena competition last year, so I can offer some insight into the judging process. It has a very good online judging portal that allows discussion about images, and I think you can see how the other judges have voted as well as you're voting, which I think is quite interesting. I don't remember that aspect of it, but I don't think so. But one of the things I definitely felt is that they get judges together who are all experts in their field, but often they're quite niche in their knowledge. So the underwater category there is not judged by, I don't think there was even an underwater judge this year, underwater specialist judge. So it's judged by, a news photographer and there'll be, say, a National Geographic nature photographer, and then there'll be, someone who's, a photojournalist doing human interest stories, and then there'll be a newspaper editor or something like this. So a very diverse set of photographers. I have to say, I think when it comes to underwater stuff, or nature stuff in general, but also underwater stuff, a lot of them feel a bit out of their depth. They're like, "Ooh, well, I like this one, but I don't know if I should like it because I don't know if it's rare or special or unusual or everyone's got this shot." And I feel that in that situation, a lot of the judges, they gravitate towards choosing pictures that they know are good, that they probably recognize from somewhere. And I would argue that perhaps in a competition like Siena, and the results perhaps bear this out, is that actually the better known your photo, the better its chance of success. And I think that that's quite unusual because I think, one of the things I hear people say a lot is, "Oh, I'm going to enter my pictures in a contest. Should I hide them away so no one's seen them beforehand?" And I actually think Siena is very much a contest where the more widely seen your picture has been, the better its chance of success, because I think a lot of the judges will latch onto that. And the steer from the competition organisers is very much, we are presenting these pictures to, the visitors, the tourists that come to Siena, the Italian public. They've probably not seen any specialist underwater photography contest. So we don't mind if this picture's been awarded in all the underwater photography contests, because those people are not going to look at our results. It's going to be this whole new audience for the pictures. And we just want the very best pictures. And so I would say that, to answer the question, I do think that contests ideally would love to have fresh images. However, some contests have a different agenda because they've actually got a fresh audience and therefore are not so worried about fresh images. And I would suggest in this particular competition, actually the better known your picture, the better its chance of success, ironically, because I think you have judges that maybe feel a bit out of their depth and latch on to stuff that they basically already know that it's won something big and therefore they feel happy with it. And secondly, I think that the organisers also want to celebrate the very best photography. And again, they quite like pictures that are well known from other places because they can give them this amazing presentation in Siena.
Well, with that said, shout out to our buddy, friend of the show, Shane Gross, for winning the underwater category in Siena with his tadpoles.
Oh, right. I didn't know who'd won, so everyone was answering that. But I don't know if Shane would agree with that. Maybe he can get in the comments below and tell us what he thinks.
Maybe. But anyway, props to Shane. I love his tadpole pictures. But we'll have another Q&A video for you guys soon. In the meantime, if you guys have other questions you would like answered, please, of course, leave those in the comments. We will do our best to answer them on a future episode of the show. Thank you guys for watching.